Making a test, wondering if it works. Wondering. Well, I guess if you all are ready, we can get started. So this lecture is mostly going to be about counting territory. I guess you could call it a bit of a cousin lecture to some of the lectures on Endgame, because knowledge of, at least basic knowledge of Endgame is necessary. You should be hearing my voice, yes. Yes, if you're not, that's problematic. Um, so a basic knowledge of Yosei is necessary, but it's a bit of a different skill to count territory. We're not talking about endgame counting when, the territories are mostly settled and, you're just looking at, the last 20 moves of the game. We're talking about, estimating territory right early in the game and figuring out, what's the biggest opening move? How can we estimate territory when there are only 20 or 30 or 40 stones on the board? And naturally, you can't make, you cannot be absolutely exact in such calculations, but nevertheless, having a skill set to, see, okay, who's winning in the opening, who's losing in the opening. These are very useful skills to have. But before then, actually, for the first 10 minutes, I wanted to show you guys a really, really, really funny professional game. This is a bit off topic from the lecture. This is perhaps my favorite professional game of all time. I'm sure some of you are already familiar with it. It is the false ladder game. And we're just going to go through it quickly because it's always nice to have a few laughs before we start a lecture. So this is a game between Lee Sedol and another professional player. Yeah, we're just going to go through it quickly for some of those of you who aren't familiar. And basically, there it turns out Lee Sedol ends up using a 20 move false ladder to win the game by resignation, which is pretty damn funny, in my opinion. So the game started out simply enough. This is a joseki I'm sure some of you who are a bit stronger are all aware of. And I could actually give a whole lecture on this move and all of the intricate things that can come out of this move. I could give a whole lecture on it. No, 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 I'm not. We're gonna go through the beginning rather quickly. So without going into huge amount of detail about each of these moves, this is a pretty well established joseki. And what ends up happening is that Black ends up sacrificing his corner, and it looks like Black is in tatters. But the key here for Black is that first of all, he still has some forcing moves, and second of all, there's this threat of ladder for White's O6 stones, so that'll end up giving Black a free move on the top. So let's see how this game progresses. So White goes to break the ladder with his stone, and Black goes to double approach. And so they set up like so. White takes the open corner, Black captures, White ensures that he can't be netted, and this is where interesting stuff right about here. Interesting stuff begins. So, the question I have for all of you, and if you are already seen this game, don't answer. The question is, we have a ladder that's about to begin with the D13 stone. If Black next plays D12, can he ladder that stone? That's a very, very critical question. What say you guys? Can he ladder the stone? Right, he cannot ladder the stone. But let's see what happens. Well, obviously. Yes, he could, couldn't he? So, and yet he's playing out this ladder. He plays it out. Yeah, so this is a really interesting move. Um, if White attempts to defend directly like this, something really, really funny happens. The ladder ends up working now after Black turns White into a dumpling. So this is why, so White cannot resist directly because he ends up killing himself. So White has no choice but to play the N8 move, which prevents the ladder. But now something really, really, really funny happens. Black plays all of these stones for the sole purpose of taking m6 and Sente, which is a very important move because it allows him to take n9. And with n9, all of white stones on both sides become dead, and all of black stones becomes alive. This is about a 60 to 65 points that black has gained by killing those stones. And so the question is, did white gain 60 to 65 points worth of compensation? Oh yeah, the bottom left is hilarious as well. So to make a really long and really, really complicated fight under 10 minutes, they basically turn into an insanely complicated battle between their stones, and Black ends up managing, Lee Sedol ends up managing to make a really, really cool Seki with his attack. I don't think this was a blitz game. It wasn't a slow. It wasn't. It was not a slow game. So what ends up happening, if we move on a bit, is really funny Seki. And black stones basically live there, and white is left with almost no territory. So white is now left to figure out a way to win the game. And they have their little co-fight for a bit. And what black ends up doing is basically sacrificing his stones on the side because black decides that this is all the territory he needs. And white resigns here. And I just, this is a game that brought endless laughs to me when I first saw it because, supposedly you're never supposed to play out bad ladders. But, every now and again, can do amazing things. So that was just a quick aside. Let's back to the lecture. Yeah, this was pretty funny. So, back to the lecture. Counting territory. This is the first situation I want us to look at, and without anyone yelling out too much. This is a game between two professionals. One of them is Chochikun, and his opponent is, God, I should remember his opponent's name, but I am not remembering it at the moment, unfortunately. But that aside, the key question here I want to ask is, first of all, without looking at any techniques or studying anything, first of all, first question is one, who is winning the game, if either player? And two, how would you estimate each player's territory? I want a specific number that you would grant to each player. So take some time. Don't just yell out something. We'll be here for a few minutes. Take some time. Look at both sides' areas carefully, and see what is true territory. And I want you to count that out for each side. Give me your final numbers for each side, a singular number, and then obviously with those numbers, you will say who you think is winning. Also, don't forget there is Komi. So why don't you guys take a bit and look at this game? Let's see what you guys come up with. I'm interested because this was an interesting question given to me. Oh, Otake Hideo was black. Excuse me. Yes, black. I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that black has captured one stone thus far. Yes, that is correct. It's a fairly not a particularly vicious opening. We have our first guesstimate, second guesstimate. Oh, 50 seems to be a bit of a consensus for black. Don't forget white has Komi, so include, if you haven't, include white's Komi in your estimates, 6.5. Oh no, 5.5, I'm sorry. Komi is 5.5. This is a older game. Well, counting in the opening is a unique skill. It's different than counting in the endgame. Well, exactly. We don't know exactly. However, as we're going to talk about in this lecture, depending on the status of various groups on the board, we can say, well, this will probably turn out to be one player's the others, or well, this could probably be reduced. We will talk about those over the next hour. But I just wanted to see the general views. So if unless anyone else has any estimates to spit out, we will go over counting. Going once. Any other estimates? Going twice? Going three times? All right. Well, first I will tell you the answer, actually. According to Chochikun, one of the players in this game, he said that it is a half-point game right now. That was his professional estimate. A point 0.5 game either way. So let's see exactly why he decided that this is a half-point game. Let's see. Well, let's start with estimating Black's territory because Black is a bit easier to estimate than White. So when we count territory in the opening, what we're looking at is, I guess, what we could call territory that's already there, at least to some extent, not territory that you think, well, maybe I'll make an extension later on. So, for example, for Black's E3 group, maybe later on Black will be able to get an extension at H3, or maybe he'll make points in the center, maybe he'll be able to use this wall to do something. We don't know. There's simply no way to know how much this will get Black. So we don't count any territory for Black yet for his wall. But let's look elsewhere. So first off, the upper left. Well, first of all, what points should we not count in the upper left? First off, we should not count A16 because we don't know what's going to happen. Well, we know that it's not going to become Black's point. I mean, either White's going to get it and Black's going to play A17, or Black's going to get it. Most likely, Black will get it because Black has more Sente potential getting A16. So that's not going to be a point. We can't count it. We also can't count G18 because Black hasn't surrounded that all yet. We can't count G19. And it gets a little bit trickier on the border. But, at the moment, we still probably cannot count F18 as a point either, because, White still has a move at G18, which can force Black to play F18. So, we might say, well, maybe, the idea with counting this early is that you want to be conservative about your estimates. It's far more likely that you're giving yourself or your opponent too many points than too few. So it's much safer to err on the conservative side. So with this in mind, we can say that Black's upper left is 18 points. Let's take a look at the upper right. Now the upper right is very easy to overestimate, but it's very important that we don't overestimate it. Oh, James. Yeah, he's pretty good at this. Absolutely. So let's take a look at the upper right for a second. Now, it might look at first like Black's upper right can be estimated to be a fair amount larger than it is, but we have to notice that Black has really invested a lot here into taking the corner. And when we're considering estimates for at this point, if a move like O18 is in all likelihood going to be Sente, when White plays it, then we can't give Black those points. And considering how many points Black is going to lose and in Gote if he ignores this move, we can say with a fair amount of likelihood that Black is going to play this move. Black is going to play P19, and White is going to be able to get this sequence. By the same token, it's also extremely likely that White is going to get this sequence as well. Now, is this an absolute definite? No, it's still early in the game, and this is not an exact art or science. It is estimates. But we can say definitively we can say that Black has 11 points in his corner right now, Maybe he'll have more points. We don't know. Maybe. But we can say as an absolute fact that if black responds to, basic endgame moves, he will have 11 points in the corner. So let's take a look now at the bottom left. R14 before S16. R14. R14. Like, oh, I see what you mean. Right. You mean like this. Um, you know, you could do this, but there's really no reason to. I mean, so you can play S16 right now, and the question you have to ask is white really going to play R14 right now? I mean, the chances of R14 being the biggest move on the board is pretty slim. But by reverse, if black takes R14, it's pretty darn likely that white is going to respond to it if black takes R14. So you don't really need to do it, and it's also a needless risk. So sometimes what black can do, or sometimes what white can do, is maybe white can do this. And now we have a really complicated thing that happens. Now, sometimes you can say, oh, well, maybe white will die. Will white live? Will white die? Sometimes he'll die. Sometimes he'll live. But it needlessly starts a complication that you don't need to occur. So generally, you should not, unless you have a very, very, very special purpose. So let's take a look at the bottom right. Now, this is one that is a little bit trickier because, you can make an argument. There is an argument to be made that, well, it's not absolute territory yet. Because technically speaking, white has a move at R6. However, this is a situation where we really have to look at the rest of the board. And the question is, at this point in the game, can white safely play, or can white, correctly play R6? Would it be acceptable for white to play R6 yet? Why? Why not? Why or why not? I'm interested in reasons. Classic Rukus answer. Because it's what I would do. Yes. No, yes, Naman, that's perfect. Yes, white stones in the upper right, or well, the right, R13 and R10, are not particularly strong. Not to mention, well, it does help black to get stronger, but the key here is that white's surrounding stones aren't amazingly strong, in particular the R10 group. So, later on in the game, maybe if N3 becomes much stronger, or if R13 becomes much stronger, or both, later on in the game, we can say that, oh, R6 will exist. But we can say for the purposes of estimation, counting territory in the opening, white cannot play R6 yet. So for now, although this could change, and this is why you need to constantly recalculate territory, but for now, we can consider it black's territory simply because white cannot invade right now. So the question becomes, well, what about this bottom right corner is not territory? So what points should I X out in the bottom right? Any ideas? What should I X out for not counting? Just spit out some points. I'm interested to see where you guys put the border. Let's see, what should I X out? No, bottom right. Just black's territory in the bottom right. No worries. What about, let's see. Well, yeah, O2, but O2 is never really inside black's territory. So yeah, we can definitely X out P1, and we can X out P2. That's not territory yet. We can X both of these out because they're absolutely not at territory at this moment. Oops, not Q1. Yeah. Actually, we can also X out Q3 because white still has a move at Q4 potentially, and if black responds at Q3, naturally that's not going to be territory. So remember, we're just estimating the minimum that black is going to have. You can say, oh, well, maybe he'll have more, maybe black will have more. But we are estimating the minimum that black can claim right now. Now, we also need to X out all of these points on the third line because, it's not difficult for white to play Q7. And, if white plays Q7, and black responds simply, naturally these are not going to be points. So we're giving ourselves a minimalist estimate. And we can also X out S8 and T8, of course. And on this side, and over here, we can probably take out these two as well. Because for this in particular, it's a lot easier for white to be able to take S9 and Sente, because black doesn't have many helper stones for R8 nearby. It's very hard for black, potentially later on, to Tanuki. If white times it correctly, it's difficult for black to Tanuki this move if timed correctly. But nevertheless, you can make potential arguments. So we can generally say that this bottom right area is 17 points. So we have 17 in the lower right, 11 in the upper right, and 18 in the upper left, being very minimalists in our counting. And as long as you treat both sides the same, it's fine to be a minimalist. The advantage of being a minimalist is that you never overestimate. You just to say what is mine. And so with this kind of estimate, we can say that black has 46 points of territory as a great place to start from. Now, this can vary wildly during the game, depending on does R6 exist as really exist as territory. It depends on both of white's groups around it. But before we go into that, let's talk about white's territory. White's territory is a little bit trickier to count. But let's start off with the easier groups. Generally speaking, as a general rule of thumb, and there are, of course, exceptions, and you can make many arguments one way or the other, but as a general rule, you can say that a third line two-space extension, unless it is very, very weak, you can say that it's worth about 4 points. There are, of course, sliding under invasions that can be made to reduce it. So it may end up being lower. And if you manage to get moves like S9 or S14 to expand it, it may be a bit larger. So a general rule of thumb is to just give it a good old estimate of about 4 points. So we can see from these three groups that white has so far about 12 points. So the main question, and the particularly difficult one in this game, is how the heck do we estimate the left side? Because, it's on the one hand, black has this E7 stone, first of all, and oh, wait, I messed this up. One moment. These two stones are supposed to be here from the game. Small thing. So, black's E7 stone is staring down, looking to reduce white's left area, and white doesn't really have, we can't say it's absolute territory yet, but the question here is similar to the question of, this potential R6 invasion, and that is can black make an aggressive invasion to, proclaim that this left is not white's territory? For example, can black play this move? It's pretty hard. It's not easy to seal this stone inside, but I should say, can black intelligently play this move? Is the question I would ask. Can black intelligently play this move? Yeah, it's probably overplayish. That's a fine word to use. White doesn't even need to be complicated. If white just plays very, very, very simply and lets black get out like this, this is not a great position for black to put himself in, because you know what? Yeah, he might escape and he might end up destroying some of that territory, but geez, his E3 group is looking almost suicidal in its infirmity right now. Yeah, his oh hey Bloodmaid. His E3 group is very, very unhappy. So while this may change in the future, at this point in the game, right now, if we're counting, we can say that black cannot invade the left side. Or at least, maybe he can reduce, but he cannot directly invade. And that gives us a good starting point. So let's see, what can we count as territory in this left side area? Well, first of all, things to X out immediately. Well, first off, things to X out immediately. Uh, we can definitely X out these moves because, in all likelihood, black will probably, if, assuming basic, you'll say black will be able to take E2 in Sente because, that C2 jump is gigantic and potentially Sente itself. So we can say it is, rather likely that this is not an unintelligent assumption. Now, this may not happen, of course, but this is a conservative way to guesstimate. This is what Cho Kun would suggest. This is one of his games that he actually took a look at in terms of his counting. So that's what I'm taking this one from. For the first one, I wanted to ensure I didn't make any blundering mistakes. Counting is a very difficult skill. So also because of that, we can say that C2 and C1 are also not points because if black can take E2 and Sente, as we just saw, these two are not going to be points if white stones are there. So we can cut off those four. Let's see, what other points can we cut off? Well, we can probably cut off this point because black can take D6 in Sente whenever he likes. And if black takes D6, white, of course, is going to have to play C6. So we can't really count that as points. We're also going to have to, now the question here, and the most important question for counting this though, is how do we measure this middle area between C8 and C12 for white? How do we measure it? How much territory? We saw that black can't invade yet at C9, but regardless, how much territory should we put there for him? Any ideas? What should be at the cutoff line? Should we give white fourth line territory there? Should we give him third line territory there? Second line territory? Any? One guess for everything below the third line. Third and fourth line are not territory. Third line? You're all very good at this. Yes, correct answer is everything below the third line. And actually, B12 as well is not a point. That's just a bit of Yosei. Black can take C13 in Sente, causing white to play C12. And then later on in the game, white will be forced to play B12. Yes, 16th line territory, naturally, of course. So we can say that this is white's territory. And counting this, we have for ourselves 27 points. So 27, and then 444 for each of the two space extensions, and we can give white 39 points. Then add combing to that, and you make ourselves 45.5, giving us 45.5 to 46. Oh, 5.5 combing, so 1.5 game, yeah. Excuse me. So 0.5 to 1.5 game. So we can say that it is a extremely close game. No. It is a .5 game. Well, no. Yeah. Silly pro. Silly pro. But so the question here is, what can we do? So it's white's turn right now. And based on our counting, the game is very even. So once we've counted, the next thing we need to do is figure out, first of all, we're white. Does black have any potentially weak groups? He does. Oh, which group would that be? Yeah, the E3 group is absolutely potentially weak. So then the question is, how should we attack the E3 group as white to try and, shall we say, shift the territorial balance? And how should we attack it and why? Any ideas how to attack such a group? What, no suggestions? None? Any ideas? G7? Peep? E6 wedge? E9? All sorts of interesting ideas. Anyone else? G3? Ah, York, it's almost like you're a Don player or something. That was a very accurate assessment of how the game ended up progressing. All sorts of interesting moves are available. So York's strategy is actually the strategy that our Choch Kun attempted. But the question is how to set up such a strategy. Having a general idea for something like that is great, but how do we implement it? Huh. His idea is H7. Well, the actual move from our game is a little bit different. The game move at this point is H6. Apparently he thought that H7 was a little bit too thin. But this is a very well played move for White. So not only is White focusing on attacking Black's group, which is nice itself, but as York said, White is also planning on this R6 move. With White having two, basic two-space extensions on both sides, it's pretty tough to make the R6 invasion. But if one of White's groups were to become substantially stronger, for example, it would probably become a lot easier to do. And so this would shift a lot of points from our estimate. And this is what White is attempting. This is a deep strategy. So the game basically progresses like so. Black makes a base, and White kicks, and White goes to rip out Black's base. And Black actually ends up getting some interesting reduction against against the territory here. But the question we want to ask is, should White be sad? I think I might have messed up the move order by one. But regardless, this was what. Oh yeah, then they made this exchange. So I might have messed up the move order, but this is the final result that occurred from their local fight here. Or yeah, right here. And so the question is, well, first off, let's do another territory count. If we do another territory count and we look at the left side here, White has been substantially reduced. I mean, earlier we counted White at 27 points. If we come back now, it's probably only worth maybe 13 to 14 points. Now let's look at how I got to that number. So let's see what we can X out. First off, well, B2, of course, is not territory. And hard to say exactly what will be territory over there. Also, Black will be able to take C11 in Sente, remember. Whenever he likes, Black can make the exchange of A for B. But if Black attempts C, C is Gote. So White may get B11 before Black gets D. So this is, or before Black gets C. So this would relate back to the Yosei in terms of basically splitting the difference. There's a 50% chance that White will link up all these stones and will get himself maybe 4 points in that little area. And there's a 50% chance that he won't get any points in that little area. So for purposes of estimation, we can basically count it on average 2 points. So 2 points plus the rest the rest that White has here, and we can say about 13 to 14 points. So White has lost himself. Maybe he's basically been cut in half. He's lost 13 to 14 points in territory, even though he's launched this attack. And he's gained a few points. We can say that White's two-space extension on the bottom White's gained himself one, two, three. Well, that's not a point. We can say for sure that White has gained himself basically 3 more points on the bottom, an overall loss of 10 points. However, White can now make compensation for himself, and that's what he does. White's next move is to take R6. And so now, sure, White has lost 10 points on the left, as White knew that he would lose about, or a little bit more than 10. White has lost that. Chochukun knew that he would. And now he intends to make compensation by cutting Black up. And so, professional players, especially in slower games, will constantly count and recount. Even in the opening, after every little local fight is done, they will recount the board and determine, do I need to invade, or can I just build up my own territory, or what will a move that I'm playing do for me in the future? So White has set up for himself the attack at R6, which would normally have been impossible before White had played his H6 move. But so White is counting pretty accurately for himself in terms of what he needs. And we could go much deeper into this game, but I want to go over a few more interesting situations. Let's take a look at the next one. Where did I put it? No, 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 no. Ah, here we are. Where did I put that thing? Ah, okay. So let's look at a joseki now and see how we can judge that joseki. Now, obviously, in a real game, there'd probably be other corners having been played. But for our purposes, we're just going to concentrate on the lower left. So this is a joseki that you may not be familiar with, actually. It's somewhat old-fashioned. But it's actually really useful to have in your toolbox if you ever want to build thickness as black. Um, so C3 is a sacrifice move. When black plays it, he knows he's going to give up 2 stones. And the idea is that this will happen. And this is the basic joseki. And so the question we have to ask ourselves first is how big is White's corner from this joseki? How many points does White have in the corner? One for 9, one for 6, 65, 6 again. So in actuality, White's corner can be said to have not, to have 10 points. Oh, York, yeah, very good. Yeah, 10 points. The key here being A4. Once again with this kind of gote-gote situation with B5, there is a 50% chance, that black will get B6, and there's a 50% chance that white will get B6. So on average, we can say that this little area here will probably net white 1 point on average. And with that 1 point, we can say that white has 10 points. If we need to count it out, we can simulate this 1 point as being A4. We have 8 points plus the 2 captures that white has made for a 10-point corner. So second question, how many points does black have right now? This is a trickier question. From this wall right now at this exact point without any other stones anywhere nearby, how many points does black have? Without estimating, oh, what will my thickness make in the future? Or, oh, this or that. Just literally, how many points is this right now, period, solid? All sorts of numbers. So the correct answer here is 0 points. Black does not have any points at this exact moment. Now, does this mean that, oh my God, this isn't a joseki, that Black has gotten some sort of miserable result? No, absolutely not. Black has, yeah, exactly, resigned. Black has made thickness. And this thickness's usefulness depends on what else is on the board. So depending on what stones already exist, for example, the value of these stones that Black has played can vary wildly. So, for example, let's say that this is the overall board position. Well, that's just the thing. In terms of counting territory, just counting the raw points is not always enough to say who is winning. You can say that, oh, well, we have similar territory, but wow, my opponent has a gigantic amount of thickness. And, you can't necessarily estimate exactly what that thickness is going to be, but you can tell yourself, okay, so let's see, in terms of direct territory, my opponent's beating me by maybe 10 points, but I have this really nice wall. And my opponent doesn't have any really nice thickness everywhere. So, I need to focus on right now that I need to make sure by the end of the game that this wall, I need to make sure it's worth 10 points or more than 10 points. And so it gives you an idea of, how useful or how much your wall will end up need to either A, get you, or B, reduce your opponent. So an estimation. Yeah, it's a fine method as well when you have a no, that's a very accurate method when you have a developed area, but when you just have a single wall with no extension, I don't think you can really count any points yet. So in this particular situation, what do you guys think? Is Black's thickness useful, or is it, shall we say, ideal or close to ideal? That's a fine way of looking at it. But what do you guys think? On the left side, Black has made this thickness. Sure, we could even call it Black Sente if you like. Sure. We're concentrating on the left for now. Is Black's thickness being useful on the left? Well, it's not necessarily that it's too high, but the problem here is that White's group is pretty solid and pretty safe, and it's not going to be easily attacked, and there's no easy way for Black to make a good extension. So we can pretty clearly say that Black cannot develop his left side. Well, if Black tries to make an extension, yeah, it'll be pretty over-concentrated. Not exactly pretty. So, right, I mean, maybe he can make some points on the bottom. But the problem with the bottom, of course, is that E2 isn't defended yet. So we can't call that necessarily solid. But just focusing on the left side, yeah, just focusing on that area, we can't really say that Black's thickness is particularly useful, but let's flip the upper left and see what happens. What if the upper left is flipped and it's like this, and suddenly we have a very, very different situation here. Now, this is also an interesting situation. Um, so we have a relatively wide extension between D14 and D7. And assuming that white does not have any particularly amazing thickness in the center so far, or unless you have, I guess, the easiest way to say it is unless you have a particularly strong reason, a strong reason on your particular board position to believe that that this is not the case. For now, we can actually estimate that underneath this, for now at least, we can say that black perhaps has, 30 points worth roughly of territory on the left. Now, the easy line you can say to that is, oh, well, wait, it's invadable. It's open. And yes, it is invadable. But, and if you determine that you cannot get enough compensation from a white invasion, then you need to play another move to make this area solid very quickly. But the calculation that you have to make is, well, okay, so this area, sure, it's not 100% safe, What if white invades here? And let's say purely for the sake of argument, that black just responds very simply and just caps on top and then lets white live in the corner like this. And so the calculation you have to make is okay, so how useful is this wall going to be for black? Black used to have 30 points in there. Well, it's more thickness, but it depends on what's going on the rest of the board. Well, white should probably reinforce and then extend. So black has this giant amount of thickness, and he's ended up losing what we, used to count as about 30 points. That's a lot of points to lose. So the question you have to ask yourself is, from this original position, from the original position that we had, from here you need to look at it and say, okay, if white invades, I'll probably be able to build a big wall outside of it, and white will be able to steal my 30 points. So can I build at least 30 points, if not more? And if the answer to that question is yes, then it's not critical that you defend this territory immediately. However, if the answer to that question is no, if you cannot definitively say that, yeah, I can make 30 points with my wall, or I'll be able to reduce my opponent, 30 points with my wall, unless you can say that, if you can't say that, then you got to defend this thing. So let's say for the sake of argument that this happens. And well, first of all, black has a lot of reduction moves because he's so thick. Black can take this incente and this incente and this incente and this incente. And I mean, we can talk about maybe one move or one move being slightly better than the other. But for the sake of argument, we can say that white will be severely, severely reduced. He won't die, but black can make a lot of forcing moves all around him in Sente. And this can actually be made into a Seki. So white's territory will really be really, really small in here. And this is a calculation that you'll need to make in your game. And it's not an easy calculation to make. But, if this were an open board position, I think this would be a fair exchange to make. I think we could say that, it's probable that black will be able to make and reduce what white has, up to 30 points with this wall. I mean, it's basically spanning the entire board, and it's fairly solid. So I think it's a fair estimate here. Yeah, I know, I like black too. But these are the kind of calculations that you need to keep in mind. So let's take a look at a pretty basic situation. Corner enclosure. How many points, how many, very solid points can we say that black has in this corner being conservative? What is a conservative estimate for saying, black has this many points conservatively? Any other guesses? Such high guesses. Wow. Such a big corner? We can say no, we can say actually 11 points is probably accurate. It's a bit more than 10. 10 to 11 points is probably accurate for Black's corner thus far. What about, now this is actually an interesting one. What about an individual star point by itself? You just have this star point, you haven't made any extensions on either side to it. The focus has been on the other part of the board, and you're trying to estimate territory. How much territory can you say that this star point is, probably worth? Well, a lot of people saying 0. A lot of people saying none. Rukus is Rukus standing alone with his guess of it having actual point value? Oh, Rukus is alone. Oh, no, we have someone joining Rukus. So actually, I was interested to hear what Chochkin wrote on this point. According to him, the star point, he says that the star point is can be estimated at 13 points for each move at the corner. What does that mean for each move at the corner? Oh, each opening move. I mean, you could say that maybe it'll get close to that, but just at this point, the star point by itself can be said conservatively to be about 5 points by itself. Because, yeah, of course, the 3-3 point is open, naturally. As everyone knows, the 3-3 can be invaded, and it can be turned to 0 points. But, we don't know for a fact that the 3-3 point will be invaded. It may be invaded, or black, or they may make a exchange. So this is, of course, a very rough estimate. But for the purpose of for the purpose of estimating in the opening, we can say that on average, 5 points is a fair estimate. I mean, if something like this occurs, maybe black's corner will be anywhere between 5 to 10 points or more, depending on what follows. Of course, if white goes directly in there, the corner will be worth 0. So, calling it 0 points isn't a good way to do estimation because that's basically like saying that, you're not giving the star point any value. You might as well throw the star point off the board and count the board exactly the same way. And that's probably not a good idea because, the star point definitely has some value. So 5 points, at least according to him, is a fair estimate for the star point. But let's make this a little more interesting and expand out this corner. Not this corner, but let's expand out the 3-4 and see how much territory starts to appear. So let's pretend for an instant that black has, quite possibly the most ideal corner situation possible. This, of course, is unlikely to happen in a game. But for, the sake of argument, we're going to say that black has made the perfect move, or the perfect moves to develop a moyo from his low Shimari enclosure. So first of all, right now, at this point, how many points does black have in the upper right that's solid? Conservatively. Take a bit. This is a somewhat larger area. But conservatively, how big is black's upper right? We can assume that no direct invasions inside of that are possible. There is absolutely no possible way that white should live from any kind of, crazy third line invasion. That's silly. 54. Wow. That's extremely good estimate. That's exactly right, actually. 54 points is the conservative way to estimate this. Because it is almost impossible, so long as black responds, it is, we can say, almost impossible for white to make this less than 54 points. Not only that, but black can also easily expand this area with a single additional move. Like, for instance, a single additional jump. This territory might expand by as much as 10 points. So black is making every single move worth 10 points, or every single additional move worth 10 points. At this point, he's made 7 moves, and his 7 moves have gotten him 54 points. I would challenge you to. There are very, very few situations where you can claim 54 points to yourself with only 7 moves. And you're more than welcome to try and play 7 moves wherever you like to make absolute points. But the reason why you will never, ever see any professional player allowed to make this kind of formation by their opponent is that it's simply too ideal. Black stones are working with an almost perfect efficiency. Okay, so maybe if you kill White's group with 7 moves, you can make more. But we're just talking about creating territory. So let's look at common joseki in terms of estimating territory. This is a joseki that we all see often. So first question, how many points does each side have? just from this joseki. How big is white's side? How big is black's corner? What can we say when we're estimating? It's a pretty simple joseki, but it's not necessarily the easiest question to answer. Negative 9,000. Yes, that's a very, very accurate analysis. Thank you, Ruckus. Oh, 14.7, well, 16, 15, but what about white? So does white have any points? Is white point total 0? Oh, 6 for white. 6 in Graham's number. I should learn some more mathematics. 13.0. So actually, you guys are very good with the black's area. Black's area can be estimated to be 15 points right now. Let's see, which points do we X off? Well, we can X off 019 and 018. You almost never count these at the border moves because, it's still very easy for white to play a move like, N18 potentially later. It can almost never be claimed as, very, very likely points. We can also take off these points for either side, and we can also take off these points. The reason why we don't take off the S13 points for white is because it's much likelier that white is going to be able to take S14 in Sente than it is that black will. If white plays S14, it has the potential to destroy black's corner. If black ends up taking, S14 or S15, white still has center potential, so it's not necessarily going to be as high a Sente value. Also, because white has R10, it's easier to contain if white is building up a formation. Also, we can't really count these as points yet because, black can still reduce from above potentially. Obviously, you wouldn't do this on an open board, but we're saying potentially later on, if black just makes very simple reduction moves, it's clear that those are not going to be points. And we also, by the same rule, we can't count these. And we're also not going to count P17. So with this counting in mind, we have 15 points for black and 6 points for white. Now, you can say, oh, well, is white's territory absolute? I mean, does an invasion point right here exist? Well, I mean, you can say that, yeah, at some points in the game, black may be able to do this, but assuming black does not have a formation in the bottom right, this is not good go. This is a pretty bad move, actually, for black to consider playing. It's not amazingly difficult for white to really attack this stone harshly. And even if black stone ends up living, it's very, very likely the white will get much more in compensation. Now, for example, if we were to say that black controlled the bottom right corner, if this were the board, then in this case, we would not say that white has 6 points on the right because it's much, much, much easier for black to invade at R12. So when considering whether or not a formation like white's territory, the basic question to ask yourself is, well, would it be an intelligent move for my opponent to, invade there right now? And if you can say, yes, yes, it would be a very smart move for my opponent to do so, then it's probably not territory. You probably can't give it any value. But if your answer is no, that'd be a horribly stupid move. Then, yeah, you can provisionally at least count that as territory for yourself. By the same token, if white decides to jump again, then now we can I guess you could say recount this as this becomes territory for white because black can no longer easily invade. Furthermore, it would likely be bigger than 6 points. So let's now that we have these kinds of counting rules in mind, let's look at another whole board situation, and I want everyone to take a minute or at least a few minutes to really focus on it. Not the, oops, we'll go on to that one later. Nope, not this one. I'll find it. Give me a second. So what happens when you make your SGFs too big? Oh yeah, that's an exercise. SGF is too big. Da, 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 da. Problematic. All right, I will. Found it. This is a good one. So Black has just played C6, and so with what we have in mind, what we've been studying tonight already, I want everyone to take some time and think. Don't just yell at answers. And I'd like to hear what your conservative estimates are for what is White's solid territory, or generally solid territory, and what is Black's generally solid territory. Oh, I'm sorry. That's terrible that your bed broke. So what? Take a few minutes and give me your estimates. What is a point total for Black and a point total for White? Take some time. I'm interested to see with this one because this one's a little bit trickier than the last one. Huh? Black can't R18, but has to R18. Mm, oh, um, hmm. Is that necessarily the case? I mean, whites or black certainly can't play S16. Is S18 such a bad choice? Hmm. Is there something in there I'm not seeing? Why can't he do both sides? So let's see. We have one guess at black at 41, white 42.5. Some numbers around the same range. So then your guys' assessment would be, wow, this is a razor-thin game. I'm interested to see if everyone else agrees. I'll give everyone else about 1 more minute. Now, in your own games, you're going to need to be able to do this kind of thing as you start. It'll probably take you a few minutes, but the ideal is that you should be able to calculate, at least with a moderate amount of accuracy, the whole board estimates like this in under a minute. If it takes you more than a minute, then it's probably not going to be very useful in most of your games unless you have extremely slow time controls. It's probably not going to be very useful if you can't do it in under a minute. So you might not be able to do that right now, but that should be a goal to work towards. So Black 46, what does White have, FC? Ah, well, that's the big question, isn't it? Do you count any area between C6 and D11? Is it just zero? Is that worth, can we believe that Black will make 0 points there? Assume 5.5 Komi. Yeah, 5.5 Komi. So just to add 5.5 to your totals. I see. Yeah, it is difficult with absolute confidence to say exactly what he'll make. But we'll talk about that area in a second. Anyone else have any final guesses before we move on? Going once, going twice, going 3 times? Anyone else? All right, let's take a look at how much points how many points each side has. So first off, white's a bit easier to estimate here. Let's start off by estimating white. First of all, in white's lower left corner, what points can be x'd out from the lower left corner as not points? What do we x out in the lower left? X out, well, hard to say if we're going to X out A3. You can't assume that black will get A4. Yeah, we can definitely X out E2, that's fine. E2 is, we cannot say is going to be white's point. So I'll explain in a second why. We also can't say that E1, or in fact, we also can't say that these are going to be points. And yes, A4. We also can't say that A4 obviously isn't going to be a point. Good old Yosei sequences. So yeah, I mean, you can X out, well, yeah, that's fairly accurate. I mean, you can just put this, right here, and it's the same either way. So yeah, this is fine. The main point to focus on is that black can take uh, F2, well, wait, F1 E2, you mean F2 E2. Yeah, the key point here is that black can take F2 in Sente. And that's very important because if black can take it in Sente, then we can just cut it off of white's totals. And white can do this. And so, as York said, 7 points is actually exactly accurate. White's corner is worth 7 points. So, let's move on to this bottom right group over here. How many points does white have in this particular group? Any ideas? How many points? Just this group. How many points? We have one guess at 11. Come on, you guys just counted this. You need that's another point actually. You should keep your counts separate for each group. Don't just lump them all together in your head. It's difficult, especially at first, but try to keep them separate so that when one group's territory changes, you don't have to recount everything. You just have to recount that one group. So two guesses at 11, guess at 9. This one's a little bit trickier to count actually than it looks because of this whole S3 situation. Well, that's the key situation. Do you consider it Sente for black? Is it Sente for black? Oh, well, S3 is difficult to assume that it's going to be Sente for either side at the moment. As of right now, it is not necessarily Sente for either side. So the correct answer here actually is 13 points. Let's see why. Well, first off, we can easily cut off these 2 points, and we can cut off these 2. And it's not particularly controversial to cut off this point. And the key is the exact bottom right and how to calculate what's going to be whites and what isn't. So it's fairly likely in this particular case that we can estimate it here. And because of black's thickness, and this is key, if black's thickness weren't like this, we might have a different estimate. But because of black's thickness here, it's fairly likely that black will be able to take the S3 move in Sente. It's maybe not 100%, but it's more likely than it would normally be. And so a good conservative way to estimate white's territory is to say that white responds to him with S2. So for a conservative guess, we can say 13 points is a fair estimate. Because you generally assume, standard Yosei responses without anything particularly fancy or flashy when doing estimates at this point. So 13 points. The right group up here isn't amazingly hard to estimate. We can say that this is probably worth about 9 points. 8 points directly in there, and we can probably claim for ourselves one additional point at Q15 will probably be one additional point. So 9 up there. And then the top group, well, doing the same thing, we can X that out. We can definitely X out E18. And I hope you guys are seeing why we can X these points out. These points can pretty easily be X'd out because, black can play here, and black can play here, and black can play here. And, it's not particularly hard to see that these points can potentially be reduced pretty directly and simply. So we can say that white has 11 points in the top. And you add these together and you get 40 points. Plus Komi gives white 45.5 points, according to Chochikun. So that's white's total. And white is actually the easier one here to count. Now we have to look into black's area. And black's is a little bit difficult because we could say moyos are almost the bane of counting because they're not easy to count, simply put. They are not easy at all to count. But let's look at the easier groups for black to count. First of all, this adorable little group that black has on the right. If we X out our proper points on the edges, we can call for black that he has 7 solid points there thus far. But for this top group right here, let's take off these for white. I'm actually interested to see what you guys think. How many points does black have with his P18 group? What is a accurate estimate? 9, 7. Any other guesses? 12, 5. So let's see. Well, first off, obviously, black can take this move in Sente. And he can, in all likelihood, he will be able to take this move in Sente. And this move in Sente. And this move in Sente. And it's fairly likely that all of these moves will be able to be taken by black in Yose. And assuming just basic white responses, we can say that white has for sure perhaps 7 points in here is fine to say. We can say 7 points, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. 6, 7 points is fine. So let's focus on the hardest one right now, and that is the left side, and that's the real point. That's the real game, isn't it? The right or the left side, and the what happens on the left side really determines for us who's winning this game. Whether white is winning, whether black is winning, whether it's neck and neck, is how much do we claim the left side is for black. So I'll open the floor. Who would like to give us a number just for black's left side area? How many points is that worth for black? Assuming, of course, that these F2 exchanges haven't been made yet. So we're not going to claim those for black just yet. So how many points are we claiming for black here? 2 guesses at 31. All right. 33. Anyone else want to give us a guess before we look into how much it is? Going once. Going twice. All right, let's estimate. Ah, 2 guesses in at the buzzer. Okay. So let's see. Well, first of all, we can X out some easy points. We definitely cannot say that these 3 points are going to be territory. And I think it's fair to limit black around here and around here. Black has invested a lot into this, so it is fairly likely that Black will respond to C18 if White ends up taking it because of the follow-up at C15, which could potentially be very painful for Black. So these are good starter points, but now the key question is this area between C6 and D11. Well, you know, in theory, this could be reduced, yes, but the main question we want to ask is it easy to invade? What do you guys think? Is this an easy invasion move? Yay, nay? Yeah, I would not recommend it either. This is probably not an intelligent move at all. Um, it's very likely that this will not end well for White. Even if, right, not right now. Perhaps if White builds some incredible formation in the center, it might become better. But it's pretty hard to say that this is an acceptable invasion for White. Even if somehow White manages to crawl out and squeeze himself life in there somehow, Black is going to build a wall of utter thickness in absolute sente. And honestly, I don't even think White can live. I don't even think it's much of a debate. Even if Black just plays very simply, I just think White's in some severe danger. Mm, there's a few interesting things that Black can attempt. Actually, this is actually an interesting response here. This is not a common move, but it does occur to me as being possible. Black's wall around e4 is really solid, so White going here is not particularly threatening. This accomplishes basically nothing for White. And the only extension White can really do is up to here. And then even if White manages to do this, I just don't see living uh, being that easy for the fellow. Just seems difficult for White to manage. Just, I think it's really hard for White to live in there. However, reduction is possible. Now, if White could safely play e9, and if Black just responds defensively, if White could do this and his e9 group would be relatively safe, relatively easily, then we could say that we could probably reduce Black's area here much more. But if White just plays this move, his stone isn't safe by any means. So while Black might have been pushed down to the third line, I mean, Black still has this move. And if White doesn't play away, and this is going to get Black a substantial amount of compensation. So White cannot take e9 in Sente, we can say, because e9 is not an effective reduction unless White is willing to take Gote. And if White is willing to take Gote, well, then we don't really need to worry about it as much because Black will have Sente to take compensation. So since White can't make any easy Sente reductions of Black's area, we can probably estimate that this will be the general borderline. As York was saying, the line between C6 and D11, if we draw a straight line between them and include the lines under it, and conservatively speaking, this will likely be Black's territory. And we can say it's 35 points probably. So adding up 35 points here and 7 in the bottom right and 7 in the upper right, we give Black a total of what? 49 points? Is my counting accurate? Yeah, 49 points. As for White in this case, White only has himself 40 points. And White does have Comey, but Black not only has a advantage of about 5 points at least, but Black also has this thickness that we're not taking into account. Um, this thickness here will probably be able to do more good at the end of the game. So not only is it a 5 point lead at least, if not more, and that 5 points is being very, very uh, conservative for black, which is fine. You should be conservative. But we can also say that black has more potential going into the future. So this game would certainly be a favorable one for black. Absolutely. Favorable game for black. Let's no, not that one. Let's see if I can find the right SGF uh, branch that I'm looking for. Ah, all right. So to finish off the evening, this is our final exercise. Hopefully, this is a good lesson in how Yosei works. This is a good lesson for counting and also for endgame. So let's say, for the sake of argument, that white, that black gets sente, and white is going to respond to every move, or white is going to defend his territory so that his territory is entirely safe each time. And so here, obviously, black can play the clamp at h18 and white defends. And then here we have the same situation. And then here, and all of this is sente. And if this ends up happening, black is going to have about an 18-point lead on the board right now. So this doesn't end up particularly good for white. So question is then, what should white do differently? Any ideas? Ah, mutual destruction. What an interesting term. Yeah, mutual destruction is the general idea. What do you mean by mutual destruction? Should ignore? Well, a key question is when to ignore a move like this. If you want to ignore it, the usual idea would be to respond once, because the amount of gain that black can take off of this is much less than the amount of gain that black can take off of this if white tanuki. So first you reduce the amount of gain that black can take, then you can attempt to take your own gain. Now let's say black says, "All right, I'm gonna continue destroying your territory." What could white do? Yeah, S12. And so this is the concept of well, white could respond once. Yes, yes, white can respond once potentially, and then just respond like so. And so the key here is mutually assured destruction. This is as much a Yosei point, actually, as it is a counting point. Uh, uh, Basically, the idea is that you should not simply follow your opponent around for every move that they want to play. Even if they can reduce your territory more, if you can threaten as many points or more, then you should rip Sente away and attempt to take it for yourself. Um, So yeah, I have one more example actually, in terms of counting if I can find the damn branch where it's supposed to be. Oh, okay, here we are. Last problem of the evening before we call it a night. So I'm sure this is a similar position to something that many of you have faced before. And without regarding the rest of the board, black just wants to focus on the right side. What would be a great move for black to play on the right side? Not a particularly difficult question. There's no complicated evil moves, just very basic move. Someone says R8. Any other ideas? Or is R8 unanimous? Oops. No, no, for black. For black. Black to play. Black to play. So R8 is the move that might come into mind because it prevents any kind of invasion. But actually here, R9 is at least as good, if not better, because white can jump and black can peep. It's something of an asking move. And black can actually end like this and not be dissatisfied at all with ending in gote because white's group isn't quite safe yet. Black still has moves like S13, but that's a whole nother lecture on attacks you can make on the two space extensions. Suffice to say that R9 is a perfectly fine move. So looking at it like this, how many points should we give to black right now in his lower right corner? Any ideas? How many points should we give him? Lots of interesting guesses. Anyone else want to take a shot? Going once, going twice, or 24? Usually one number is considered the guess. So an accurate way to count this would be about 19 points would probably be a fair way. Yeah, so, obviously R7 does exist as a possible invasion point, but the key here is that white cannot invade there right now. And that's a very important point, actually. Now, let's say for the sake of argument that, white had, say, already done this for whatever reason. Now, black playing R9 would be a terrible move because it would be much easier for white to play this. Not only would R9 be a bad move, but black could not count for himself 19 points because white is so much stronger. But because white's group is weak here, we can actually say that as of now, it's still 19 points. And white's group is about 4 points, like most two space extensions. Not only that, but white also needs to respond. And then you'll get something along these lines as a final result. And if we look at here, uh, P9 expands black by a little bit. We can probably say that black is worth about 22 points right now in terms of his area. And white actually, as of now, white can actually claim only 0 points, which is kind of funny. But white doesn't have any solid points yet. We can say that white perhaps has maybe a little bit of thickness, but there's no points because black has moves like this to really rip away white space and use the AGA from Q12 to do all sorts of nasty things. So white really doesn't have any points yet with his group. If he wants to play P14, then that changes a lot. But as of right now, it's not really any points that we can claim. So we can say 22 to essentially 0 in terms of points. But let's say that the other side has Sente. And white's natural move here would be R8 is the worth of not only white's right side group, white's R14 group, but what is the worth with this kind of stone of black's corner? How many points is black's corner worth? This is a common question that will occur in your games, but not necessarily the easiest question to answer. Because black's corner, of course, is not entirely enclosed. All right, we have one guess at 7. Guess at 9, 6. Anyone else want to take a shot? Come on, come on, take a shot. Ooh, 14 points. 12. Final call. Anyone else want to throw out their number? All right, then I Well, assuming black defends. Well, the question is, black doesn't necessarily need to defend, first of all, and we can't really assume that black will at this point, because R6 is usually a pretty inefficient move. R6 is usually a pretty inefficient move for the opening. So, I mean, in theory, black could play there now, but it's really unlikely that in the opening, R6 is going to be a big enough move that black will be able to play. So we can't assume that black will play that. So the actual answer is 7 points for black's corner is pretty good because white will, in all likelihood, be able to take this move in Sente, because unlike the original move of R8, this actually threatens to rip away black's base, and black will have to respond to it. So this is basically the end result that we can see. White can also take this move and these two moves in Sente. But this is the basic result that we'll see. But something that's interesting to note here is for white's territory, we cannot count these as white's territory yet because black still has a Tesuji around S7 to cut off the S5 stone. So these actually aren't points just yet for white to claim as his own. But nevertheless, we can, generally speaking, give white perhaps, we can safely give white about 11 points here without too much squabbling. Now you might say, oh, well, maybe he'll be 1 point more, 1 point less, and there's a lot of moves that could be played in the future. But as of this exact point, we can say that white absolutely has 11 points. There is no way, if white plays with any modest amount of competency, that this will be reduced and responds to black's moves, that this will be reduced to less than 11 points at this point. So we can say white has 11 and black has about 7 points. And if we look at this in terms of comparison, what did we just say about this happening? We just said that at this point, black has himself 19 points. At this point, right here, black has himself 22 points and white has none. And from this, if all white needs to do is take the first move here at R8, and if white does, white can change this result by having black be reduced by a good, 13, 14 points, and white himself gain a good chunk of points. We can say it's worth, yeah, about 20 points, maybe a little bit more. So we can say a move like R9 has about a 20-point value. Now this was just one example, and this is a very, very, very difficult skill to really acquire because it requires a very good knowledge of what move is sente and what move is likely to be sente in the future and what move isn't likely to be sente in the future. And that's not easy to do. But the idea is practice, start early, ask stronger players what they think about your estimates, and keep working at it because this is one of those skills that will serve you for your entire Go career. I mean, I know I've heard players that they're KGS 1 dan, 2 dan. They say, "Oh, I never count during the game," and that's a horrible mindset. That all that does is it basically you're shooting out your own kneecaps and then putting a 100-pound weight on your back and then flying blind into your game. Counting and especially accurate counting is like intelligence. It's like intelligence on the Go field, like it would be on a battlefield. It's literally figuring out, am I winning? Am I losing? And then what do I need to do about it? It can guide you to the next largest move. Well, accuracy is of course important. It can guide you to the next largest move. It can guide you to how aggressive or defensive a strategy you need to pursue. And most of all, you can learn from it. If you estimate in a game that you're winning by 10 points from the opening, and then you end up losing the game by 10 or 15 points, That should tell you something. Either A, you miscounted in the opening, or B, you really made some bad mistakes in either the mid game or the end game. So it's also great for reviewing your own games. But that being said, this has been my lecture on counting territory. I hope you all enjoyed it. I will see you next week. If anyone has any additional ideas, they are more than welcome to suggest them. So thank you all for coming.